Welcome along to Trip Notes. It's a New Zealand Herald travel podcast. It's brought to you by Intrepid Travel. I'm Tim Roxburgh from News Talk ZB's Weekend Collective, also the Herald's Travel Bugs column. And let's welcome our co-host, probably most travelled Kiwi of the past 5 years.
I doubt that very much, but thank you.
Deputy Editor of New Zealand Herald Travel, Stephanie Holmes. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you, yeah.
And today's show, so we're going to look at the difficulties of travelling with a newborn.
Which I have no experience of whatsoever, but I'm keen to know more about it.
Yeah, I have no experience of that either, but will soon with a child on the way. Also, our destination of the week. This is my favourite fun fact about this country. It's the most forested South Pacific nation, the most significant rainforest, virgin rainforest in all of the South Pacific, where there's been so much deforestation. Also, one of the best dive sites in the world. And I haven't
been there. I feel very underqualified this week.
But that's okay, because I'm sure you'll be there soon. And also our special guest, who has radio experience. He's got a TV show in over 80 countries. He's a father. He's also the first man. He has been there. Let's welcome Clarke Gayford.
Yeah, thank you so much, Clarke.
Thank you for having me along.
You're probably the busiest man in New Zealand at the moment, so we really appreciate your time.
Sometimes coming along to something like this is a nice, pleasant little getaway.
Yeah, and we get to talk about travel, so it's exactly. Like a faux getaway as well.
Yeah, it's a trip in itself.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and we're keen to talk about your life in travel and places you've been and favourite destinations, and obviously you get around a bit with your show, Fish of the Day.
Well, look, I have been quite lucky in the way that I have managed to shoehorn work into taking me places.
Very smart.
That's the way to go.
Yeah, I was even the host of Getaway Travel.
That's right.
For a brief period in time, which meant that I got to go to some cool places and stay in hotels that I'd never be able to afford.
Yeah.
And destinations that always dream destinations, but would you ever get organised enough to go there? So that was fantastic.
Yeah. That's the best thing about my job. I go to these places and I just constantly feel like the kid at the grown-ups table, because I'm like, I'm such a fake. If they find out how I live normally, they're going to kick me out of this fancy hotel. But,
no, I've had that imposter syndrome too. Like some places when you're doing an article and you get welcomed in and you're like, I can't afford to stay here. I don't deserve this. I'll enjoy it though. Yeah. It will be fun.
What was the most outrageous place you went to as getaway host?
Oh, look, I have to say Antarctica. I was down there actually filming another documentary series. We did a little getaway thing on it as well, but it's just one of those destinations that you can't just hop on a plane and go to. You have to be invited, and there has to be a reason to go down there, and it is as close to being on another planet as you might imagine. It's just your senses are all so confused, particularly because you go into their summer cycle, which from about October 24th is full daylight. So the sun dips at around midnight, and then by about 2 a.m, it's back up overhead, and it confuses your brain so much.
Yeah.
So was that at Scott Base, or whereabouts were you?
Yeah, I was at Scott Base for about 12 days, and we did. I was actually following a young scientist studying the effects of antifreeze property in a certain type of fish that exists under the sea ice. So we had to go out each day in these hoglins and other modes of transport and drill holes in the ice and catch fish. So I was kind of in my element. I loved it. It's good fun.
Yeah. And what about growing up? Like, obviously, you're a Gizzy boy, and so life must feel like a holiday when you grow up in Gizzy.
It does. Well, I think as I commented on recently, when you grow up in Gisborne, you grow up under this false pretense that everywhere is miles from everywhere else. Like, I honestly thought that everyone in New Zealand had this great big arduous hobbit trek to get to anywhere else, because going either through the Waiweka Gorge or over the Wharearatas through to the Hawke's Bay was such a, when you're a kid, you're always throwing up in the back of the car and it's always like, oh my goodness, are we ever going to get there? So, I guess it's always, it's always had, other places have had that allure of what's around the corner.
Yeah. Did you go on overseas family holidays when you were growing up? Or?
No, never on an overseas family holiday. I think about as exciting as we got was when we actually caught the train when it was still running from Gisborne to Napier so that we could go to Marineland. Yeah.
Wow.
You enjoy it thoroughly?
It was a big Gayford family outing, I can tell you.
And looking back, how do you feel about Marineland? Obviously, with your work now and your kind of conservation work and
well, it does seem like an odd little a quaint quirk of a bygone era. I remember Kelly the dolphin, that she lived there for 1,000,000 years, and the seal and everyone else. I mean, the aquarium down there is now magnificent, right next door, and that's a real little asset in Napier.
Yeah.
So when you were doing the TV show, now was it Fish of the Day or was it Getaway that you went to the Whitsundays, Lindeman Island? Is that
That
right?
was something else.
That was another show?
That was-
See what I see? I always try and find my way to shoehorn yourself into. So I did. I went over there initially for the best job in the world, which was that sort of first
That's
online.
right. Did you get that?
I got into the top 10
Right.
out of 35,000 entries, and I was the only New Zealand representative, and it exploded. It was a real interesting phenomenon. There was lots of case studies done on it. It was the first sort of viral competition that really caught fire online.
Yeah. So remind people what it was about. What was the basic plot?
Basically, it was the job to become caretaker of Hamilton Island and the Whitsundays.
Yeah.
And initially, the Australian tourism market had pitched it, I think, to the UK and to Canada, expecting a few entries from there. But it just caught fire, and every TV show promoted it, and suddenly everyone was applying, and everyone from Oprah to Jay Leno wanted in on the action.
Yeah.
And when we descended upon there, the last 10 finalists, it was just a zoo. Like, I'd never seen anything like it. It was all media at the airport and scrums and
Wow.
Coming from small New Zealand, it was a real eye-opener and a fascinating thing to go through. And it was all for this aspirational job, which was sort of this figurehead caretaker of.
Do you think the job would have been fun, or would have the job actually been
Well-
tiresome and it was a good thing not to get?
I've become good friends with the winner, Ben Sutherland, an English guy, and although it was bitter about it, and yeah, he enjoyed it immensely, and it led to a whole lot of spin-off TV gigs for him. So he
Right.
did well. In fact, he's still traveling the world in an old Land Rover, I think.
Really? Yeah, because I mentioned it because at the time I was on the OE and I found myself fairly broke and at Lindeman Island as the DJ and the tennis guy.
Right.
And so I heard that it was a strange time. Strange job share too.
Was that with Club Med?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the resort was falling apart. And then I heard you were there, or did you? Because I thought you were on the island.
No, yeah. So what happened? So this is where jobs can spin off into other jobs. So I went over and did that, and then Australia Tourism obviously saw me as someone that could promote Australia.
Right.
And then New Zealand did another show on TVNZ
Yeah.
called My Kind of Place, and they asked me to go back and be the representative for that area. So we went to Lindeman Island. So I came back and did another show on it. So were you a gracious host? Is that what they called you?
Yes, I forgot about that. Yeah, it's like a French word. So you're a GO.
A GO.
If you're front of house, and that stands for gracious something in French beginning with O.
Yes.
And then if you're back of house, you're a GE.
Wait, what, you were DJ and tennis?
DJ and tennis.
This
'cause-
is-
Did you ever do both at the same time?
This is a
I didn't.
fascinating. Stephanie, let me elaborate on this a little bit. So the whole Club Med thing is this sort of slightly. It is kind of dated, but kind of slightly sexy retreat where they have quite a few staff members, and the staff members are almost encouraged to
Totally.
fraternise with any of the guests.
Okay, I'm
that come
thinking
through.
Dirty Dancing. I'm thinking carrying watermelons.
And you were the DJ.
I was because what had happened there, it was during the GFC, so they'd laid off the tennis guy, and I was in Canada, and I'd been traveling around for a year, and I was broke, and I saw this job advertised in the Bahamas to be the tennis guy at Club Med there, and so I applied, and then they rang me and they said, "Oh, you don't have the right paperwork, but would you like to go to Australia and you can be the DJ there? By the way, they've let the tennis guy go. Do you play tennis?" And so I was just like, I just play tennis with the guests. But you're right. I had no idea until I went there that the staff, if you're front of house, if you're a GO, you have to go up to people's dinner tables and say to a family on holiday or a couple and say, "Can I eat with you?"
You're basically Patrick Swayze. This is amazing.
But I heard you were there. But then
We didn't quite
past-
connect.
I didn't come up and eat at your table, obviously.
Funny, yeah. It was so fascinating to me to see that and to see the way that they were, attempted to sort of shoehorn the staff into the guests' lives. It was interesting.
But Stephanie, you can make this happen because not long after we were there, it all closed down.
Yeah.
The whole island, which is the same size as Hamilton Island, sold for just $12 million.
Oh, just, yeah. Easy.
But it's quite a decent island.
Yeah.
Not that I've got 12 million, but
It's got a golf course.
and they're
Tennis courts.
they're building 3 resorts: a 4-star, a 5-star, and a 6-star.
Okay.
So
Bags
return
for 6-star.
Return to Lindeman.
we go.
Let's all go.
Yeah,
Okay,
redemption.
cool. Yeah, all right.
Fascinating.
And what about with Fish of the Day? What can you pick a favourite destination that you've been to? You've been all around the Pacific. It must be hard.
So we film half our series in New Zealand, half in the Pacific Islands, and asking me to choose is like picking between children because they're all just so different. And the longer that you spend in the Pacific, the more you come to understand how little you don't know, and you really start to get under the skin of the different cultures between the different islands.
Yeah.
Obviously, you have the Polynesian cultures melding into the Melanesian cultures as you head north through Fiji, up Vanuatu, into the Solomons. I've been up into Papua New Guinea as well, and I find I mean, all of the islands are unique, and they have parts that I really, really love. Like I love Niue. It's such a simple, easy island that has got such brilliant fishing and beautiful clear water, and it's such an easy flight to get to. But then you look at a place like Vanuatu or the Solomon Islands, and I think that I always come back to the fact that those names for those islands are just lazy. Because if you take even the Solomons or Vanuatu, I think between them, they have over 100 and something different languages. And the people look different between different links of the islands. And between two islands that might only be 4 or 5 kilometres apart, they can't talk to each other unless they go back to a pidgin English or Bishlama language. And then you start to learn little parts of their culture. Like one island might catch fish using cobwebs out of spiders' nests. And another island might just cook their food using a thermal vent in a volcano. And the more you spend there, the more you realise that there's just so many little differences and nuances through the whole Pacific. And one day someone described the Pacific Islands to me as the blue continent, which is, essentially when we look at it on a map, it's just this great big area of blue, and from a distance you think nothing's there.
Yeah.
But when you start to zoom in, pinch and zoom, you realise that there's islands all over the place. And there's obviously the main arterial ones that we understand, Fiji and Raro and Samoa and the like. But inside of those is just all these different islands with all of these things going on. And they've all been sort of travelling between each other for hundreds and thousands of years. And the more I spend there, the more time I want to spend there.
Yeah.
So I love them all.
Yeah, we're so lucky having it just right on our doorstep, really.
Oh, we are. And I think New Zealanders are only sort of starting to understand the potential of what is just a short flight away. You know, we for years just have thought about the Denarel flop and drop, whereas now you can go over and get on a catamaran and go out to the Sacred Islands or go out to the Asawas, or you can go to Samoa and discover the incredible fishing that's just offshore, which I didn't know about, or go from Raro up to Atataki and cruise around an island with no dogs. And, there's so many little pockets out there waiting for it to be discovered.
We're going to get one more Pacific Island nation, or rather South Pacific nation, as the destination of the week, and we'll do that soon. But let's do the travel bugs. So weekly column, which is the joys of moaning about your holiday. So I haven't yet written about traveling with a young child because the child isn't yet born.
No,
but
coming up
Clarke, for
pretty
you,
soon.
Traveling with Neve. Any advice for parents to be?
See, I see what you're doing here, Tim. You're using this forum to learn yourself.
That's right.
And essentially, in a word, just don't. Just don't.
Don't travel.
I probably do quite a bit more travelling with a young one than most, because we do split our time between Wellington and Auckland, and I know it through the ages, from when they're really little and can still fit in a cot and go to sleep, bless them, to when they get a little bit older and quite wriggly and don't understand how to keep still, and yet haven't got to that point where you can put a screen in front of them. And there are so many. It's travel for me. Getting on a plane, I used to really enjoy, because not that I don't necessarily now, but that whole not having to think anymore. You sit down, you find your seat, G, F, found it, cool. I'm next to a window, you sit down, and then your brain switches off, or you can...
Normally I fall asleep before takeoff.
Yeah, something about takeoff that sends me off to sleep.
Yeah.
But when you have a child, it's like a sports match from start to finish. You've got to work out where your uniform is, where their uniform is. Have you got your mouth guard? What do I need in my bag? Do I have a clean set of clothes? Have I put on clothes that are restroom friendly? Don't be putting on a pair of dungarees on a small child before you get on a plane, or something that you can't easily get off and on. and all these other little things. Do I have distractions in the bag? Do I have favourite toys? Do I have snacks? Rusks. Rusks are great. I'll tell you what else is great. The Air New Zealand staff. They are brilliant. They're very good at coming down. There's something about those cups that a small child particularly enjoys, and the lids. So you try and hold that out as a treat, an empty cup and a lid, and away they go. On a couple of occasions, I've even had the Air New Zealand staff put a bunch of the lollies inside 2 cups and then tape the cups together
like a rattle.
as a rattle, and hand the rattle over.
Wow.
So they are very helpful.
This is sounding like a lot. Now, I don't have children, and and you're not making me want to change my mind here.
I mean, it changes your whole perspective on other people who travel with children, and I do know now that when I'm on a plane without a child and someone else has one, you go out of your way to make them feel comfortable, because it can be quite stressful, to be completely honest.
So it's 4 months, like if you're going to do a trip, you've got a child on the way, a 4-month-old child, is that the time to do it as opposed to the 7-month or 8-month-old child?
Well, we flew to New York and back when Neve was 4 months.
Yeah.
And it was brilliant, actually, because in New Zealand have these little pods that you can request in advance at the front of each section that a bassinet plugs into.
Yeah.
And I would highly recommend, if your child has gone into a long sleep cycle, so maybe sleeps longer at night, book your flights so that it coincides with a long sleep cycle, because it will give you a chance to have a break on the plane. We just fluked that, and it was great for us, and it was great for the people around us as well.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you do get people who give dirty looks to parents, and I probably was one of them in my younger years. I really try not to do it anymore.
Right.
But yeah, it's but it must be so awful. Like, there's nothing you can. You're doing the best you can.
Well, particularly because a young child's often crying because they can't clear their ears, and they can't suck on a lolly.
And you can't explain to them like that this will pass. Like this isn't the way life is now. Yeah.
Always keep a bottle handy for takeoff and landing. Is the other tip. Yeah, so that they clear their ears.
Yeah.
Some people hand out earplugs, but is that
some
to
parents
the baby?
do?
Yeah, like to other passengers.
Oh, I was thinking baby earplugs aren't going to help a baby, but you mean other passengers, right? Okay.
Which would make sense. I mean, that could be a conscientious thing if you've got a child that you know is quite squawky. I mean, I know I don't want to say this because I know that I'll jinx myself, but because it can happen to anyone. And sometimes when you're on the plane with your child, and then down the back you hear, a baby screaming, and then you just feel so sorry for that parent who's probably trying the best that they can to manage.
And that's the handing out the earplugs and lollies and little notes. I think that's just adding even more pressure as a parent. Like, you've got a lot going on. Like, you don't need to be trying to make everybody on board the plane, like, be your best friend. Like, just chill out, people.
Yeah, I think so. How old is she now?
She is coming up 11 months.
Wow.
So we're getting into that new phase of trying not to kick the seat in front of us. So it's just as you get through each phase, a new one comes along. So,
Okay.
So I'm living all of the phases of travelling at the moment.
Well, let's get to the destination of the week. You touched on your love of Pacific Islands, but take us specifically to the Solomon Islands, because most Kiwis haven't gone there. In fact, they generally only get a few thousand tourists a year.
Yeah, their tourist numbers are really low, considering what is on offer there. We used to have much more of a connection to the Solomons because we had direct flights. But now, because it is that extra flight, we've got to go ex-Brisbane out, and some places you need malaria medication. Most Kiwis think, too hard. Look up a deal on Fiji or Rara or somewhere else. But the Solomons, I've been there twice now, and it has that element of nature and just that wild element, and people that are still connected with their culture, that when you get into the outer islands, up into the Western Province, up into Gizo, and you have these, you still feel like you're having a proper adventure when you're going there. It doesn't feel sanitized. It feels a little edgy, and yet you'll pop out somewhere and there'll be this cool little resort somewhere, and it'll be a kind of a room on a building over water with, and you'll look over your balcony and there'll be giant clams and GTs and trevally swimming past, and you sleep under a mattress with a mosquito net, and the owner's lovingly folded towels into the shape of a swan and put little squares of soap in your shower with its curtain, and it's a proper adventure when you go there. I really love it.
Which I guess is what puts some Kiwis off. Like, some Kiwis don't want a proper adventure. They want to have a nice resort where they've got an infinity pool and people are going to bring them cocktails and
absolutely. And I think, and you probably get out of Honiara as soon as you can, but there are nicer places in and around there, and there are certainly nicer resorts in and around the Solomons. But it is, it's kind of that sort of boutique, out of the way place.
Yeah.
And I mean, we were in boats, small boats, going down along reef edges, looking at perfect surf breaks with no surfers in them. And if that had been Fiji or Bali or anywhere else, it would have been 100 people out in the water. And you just think, man, this place is untouched.
Yeah. I went there a few years ago, and there are nice resorts there. But I think I was trying to think the numbers. I think it is around about 2,000 tourists a month. So about 20 to 30,000 tourists a year.
Yes.
So it's pretty low. But there's also as far as the diving, the snorkeling is concerned, because of all the World War II history, you can be snorkeling in a shipwreck. And that's like a World War II shipwreck, which is surreal.
There are so many wrecks up there that they still haven't discovered yet. we met someone who has a whole lot of depth sounder marks which look like wrecks that they haven't even dived. There's just they changed the name to one of the sounds to Iron Bottom Sound because so many boats sunk there. And we've got such a New Zealand connection to the place as well. I went and dived the HMNZS Moa. There's a couple of Kiwis that run a dive resort called Raiders. And this boat that's there was New Zealand's only warcraft lost to enemy fire.
Really?
During World War II.
What was that like, diving the boat?
Well, yeah, it's still a war grave. There's still 5 Kiwis on it, and it's eerie. It's in about 30, 40 metres, and it's dark, and you go down, and you just hit with a sort of sense of history. And, you can go from there and walk up a hill and find where the Japanese were sitting on a hilltop, and there's all still, gun embankments up there and foxholes where they crawled in and out of, and so there is that history through it as well.
Amazing. What are the people like there? Obviously, Fiji and Raro, you just used to the most amazing, friendly, smiling people. Is it the same in the Solomons?
Absolutely. Melanesian culture up through Vanuatu, people are just so nice. Particularly when you go into villages and that, and they want to show off what they've got. Yeah. And you can be and it just strikes me. We were in the Western Province, and it is this crazy little island. It's about 500 kilometres from Honiara, and the runway was made during World War II. And right where it is this marketplace that gathers once or twice a week, and people come from all around the different islands, and they come in on these long pango boats, sort of made canoes with an outboard at the end, and they're coming in from different islands. And what struck me was how one family on one boat coming from one island would look completely different to this other family on this other boat, and just these striking differences between people. It's just really, really cool to be around and to witness.
And did you hear the rumours about the giants? I mean, this is another reason why I love the Solomons. So that there's mountainous jungle, and you feel like you could be in the Amazon, except there's not an enormous, animal life. But the jungle's phenomenal, and a really sizable percentage of the population believe that there is a secret race of giants who live in the jungle and then come into the villages at night and steal people. Wow. But a lot of people will tell you stony-faced, they absolutely believe it.
Look, and if you really get on side with the local and start to build up their trust, they'll start to tell you about these things like bush motorbike. And this was a revelation to me, where and I met people, like our tour guides, and that would actually usually after a few drinks would actually come clean and confess that they it's a way for them to communicate with other people on other islands through telepathy, and they have this belief that they can talk to people on other islands through it. And when you start to unravel those little nuggets, then other things come out. We were traveling by longboat between the Western Province and Giza. It was quite a long trip, and we're just cruising along, and the guy on the boat goes, that's Skull Island over there. And I said, excuse me, Skull Island? He said, Skull's on that island. I said, can we go and have a look? And he went, okay. Yeah, so he takes us over, and we get off on this boat. There's no sign, there's no footpath that says you must not touch, or any of that sort of sanitization that comes with so many tourism experiences. And it's this little atoll that looks like a picturesque atoll as you would expect. And you get off this boat and you walk up, and there are literally skulls all over this island. In fact, there's still coral slabs that they use to sacrifice all of their war treasures. And the skulls there still have the coral necklaces of all the tribesmen hanging around them, and they're just all through the bush and things growing through them. And you're sitting there going, wow, this is incredible. And it's those little moments that lend itself to feeling like it's so much more than just going to a resort and getting sunburnt and drinking pina coladas.
Yeah. It sounds like the new kind of the place, like where everyone's always looking for the next destination that they want to discover before everybody else. So.
We got friendly with a couple of people over there, and we got told about, I'm not going to mention them here, but I got told about two things. And my producer and I just looked at each other and we said, we have to come back and film this. And it's something that I don't think has been documented before. And you go, wow, there's still pockets of people out there that are living completely isolated, and they've got their own customs and rituals that the rest of the world I don't think have heard about, and are just so different to what we know, sitting here in this clean, sterile studio with these lovely microphones.
Very bright lights.
Everyone's got hair product in and looks lovely and sparkling, and I have my nice coffee in a takeaway cup. And you go to these places and you see subsistence living, and you see these experiences, and you think, man, it's incredible to think that as the world evolves, some people are still exactly the same.
We're running out of time. We haven't even asked about a potential honeymoon destination.
I'm pleased we're running out of time.
That's off limits.
Let's keep talking about the Solomons.
Is that a clue that it's going to be the Solomons?
That would be wild.
But any thoughts on that, or that's very under wraps?
No, I'm just pleased I got my T-shirt on in the right way today. Okay, let's just leave it at that.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Clarke Gayford, for being on Trip Notes, and thank you to our sponsors, Intrepid Travel as well. And don't forget, you can subscribe to us. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and all the podcast apps like Apple, iHeartRadio, and Spotify as well. But do check out Intrepid's website, intrepidtravel.com. Thank you so much, Clarke, and all the very best for future adventures. And
new season of Fish of the Day filming.
Yeah, we're back
currently.
We're back into gear. So we're trying to plan our adventures, and we've got a few overseas destinations that I've not been to coming up. So I'm managing to make work tick off a few boxes for me, which is great.
Well
awesome.
done.
Great. Thank you so much.